Hey, my name's Mully. I'm down here in my basement again, and I'm doing a video today on sort of a field guide of determining how old your DOD pedal is. DOD pedals are super hot right now. I think some of that might be because of the JHS Lamb video, of which the Grunge is a member of, that Lamb series. It sort of blew open that series popularity. People may be kind of seeking out, like, oh, I can't afford a $300 pedal. What else does DoD have that would also be fun and exciting to use? And it may be driving the price of all the DoD pedals up. The last one I got was this one here. I bought that last year for about $35 shipped off eBay. Now it's hard to find one for under 50. They're more like 60 or 70. Another reason that might be is because I'm in my 40s. And a lot of us in our 40s grew up with these pedals. The grunge pedal is almost like America's first pedal. A lot of people in the 90s, that was the first pedal they got. There were so many of them. And at the time, people, well, they either loved or hated them. DoD was kind of like an entry-level pedal at the time. And it's kind of like the first decent pedal you might buy. They were about 90 bucks MSRP. And I'm not really going to be going over the square box ones that have the metal push buttons on them. Those are before this. Also, kind of related to these and earlier is the DoD Performer series. They're all pre any of this. So those are going to be 70s to early 80s pedals. The first pedal I have here is an FX55 distortion, and that was September 1983. And you can see the one thing that these three have in common is they all have this sort of reverse drop-down shadow DoD bubble letter. And that goes to 88. The first one that's different is in January 1990. And that's when the letter, it's still bubble letter, black that's outlined in white, but it's straight up and down. It's kind of boxy, and they centered it to the left instead of centering it. And then in the later early 90s, this one's 92, that white outline became more of a drop shadow, and they italicized the DoD. And you can see that carried through the 90s there. Then in the 2000s, when they went to the larger foot switch, they got rid of that sticker. But that's probably the easiest way you can tell how old your DoD pedal is. If it has that centered DoD with the reverse drop down, you're generally looking pre-90s to early 80s. If it has these huge knobs here, that's definitely early 80s. But don't get too hung up on how many knobs it has, because as you can see, one of the later pedals I have, the Classic Fuzz, this was made between 96 and 97. This only has 3 knobs, but a good tip that it's not that old is the Classic. If it says Classic, that means it was a Classic effect when that pedal was made. So if it says Classic Tube, Classic Fuzz, that's probably not too early. Another thing is the model name on it. The early 80s ones were kind of way different. And then the late 80s ones, and probably through the mid 80s, is a little different. And then you get to the sort of standardized until you get to the Lamb series. But also don't get too hung up on that, because this edge is kind of its own thing too. So it may not have been until the 90s that they standardized on where to put the name on that. And it kind of continued a little bit with the death metal distortion here, but you can see they changed that up too. Another thing too is that if it has a B on it, like this is the FX86B, this is the FX80B, that means that there was a model before it that did the same thing. So there is a compressor sustainer that looks like this with just 2 knobs. This is the B, it's the later version. There are some that are C's. I think either the death metal and or the grunge have a C. This grunge is the original FX69, the butt face. It says butt and face instead of low and high, because they were being edgy. But yeah, back in the day, DOD made some really awesome pedals. You can see they're a little bit more exciting exciting looking than some Boss ones. They went for wild colors, extra LEDs. A lot of their pedals were sort of metallic, and they were going for and they had unusual names. Like even before the grunge pedal, I mean, we have the Thrashmaster. There was a sister pedal to this called the Metal Maniac that was in fluorescent green. American Metal, Super Distortions. They had a lot of names and a lot of colors that would definitely grab your attention, and they generally tried to make exciting pedals. Unfortunately, Samsung or one of their subsidiaries, it gets kind of complicated as to who owns what. They bought Digitech and DOD, and they had no interest in this line of pedals, so these are all discontinued. It's another reason the prices on them are going up, and it could also be that people have some stimulus money now, so that may also be why we're seeing an increase in prices. One thing you will notice on all of these of this genre is they all have this sort of like trench cutout where the LED pedal is, or not the LED, where the pedal, where the LED light is. They all have that sort of trench there. All of them do. Even this early one has that kind of like cutout there. That carried into the Digitech line. You can see that there is that cutout there. Sorry if you hear a fan in the background. It's my furnace because I am in the basement here. But that's also in the Digitech hardwire line as well. So in a certain sense, they are all kind of a similar family because they all have that design feature. So even the hardwires have that kind of like nod back. That Digitech and this death metal pedal, I remember buying them at Mars Music when they went out of business. Everything was crazy off, and crazy percentages off, and they went out of business in November of 2002. So that's when I would have gotten both of those pedals for sure. The Chinese pedals, they're not really great at dating on the website that I used. They are between 2000 and 2008, which definitely jives with when I bought it. You can also see that on these later ones, the knobs kind of match the pedal a little bit better, where pretty much from some point in the 80s until late 90s, they were all the same. They were all the same knob. There's also differences on the battery door. The battery doors on these later ones are connected. They're not on the earlier ones, and that's why I'm missing like 3 of them at the moment. Another way to tell if it's an older or newer pedal is going to be the AC adapter. The newer pedals have a Boss style 9-volt AC adapter, and any of the older ones are going to have a 1/8 inch mono sort of AC adapter, which does cause some consternation, I suppose, with trying to get them all plugged into your power supply. But having said that, these are way fun pedals, and I hope you have fun exploring them. If you think this has been helpful, useful in being able to determine how old your pedals are, and I do kind of mean it as sort of like a field guide. Like you can know if it's got this reverse drop shadow, it's before 1990. If it's got the non-italicized bubble letters, it's going to be early 90s, and then the italicized goes from early until late 90s, and then you have this sort of obvious larger kick plate, bringing the DOD back. Also, yeah, the DOD on the kick plate only lasted until about the 90s there. So hopefully that's a good field guide for you, because I know if you're at a pawn shop or if you're at a garage sale, if you're meeting somebody on like a marketplace deal or something, if you start pulling out your phone and researching what you're looking at, your chances of getting a good deal on it kind of go down. So this is just a quick way to know basically how old the DOD pedal you're looking at is. And if you like getting the older ones, hopefully this will help. If you found this useful, please subscribe, like the like the video. If you want to see more stuff about pedals, about synths, about hopefully equipment you can actually afford, things like that, definitely subscribe, hit the bell, get notifications, all that fun stuff. It's been fun doing this video. I really like DOD pedals. I have for a long time. And I hope you do too. If you have any thoughts, questions, anything like that, drop it in the comments and I'll be happy to reply to that.